Hey there, welcome to the Changemaker Summit. In this session, we get to hear from the Aaron Donaghy. Aaron is the dad of two incredible boys, a husband, and a leadership coach, but really likes to flip leadership upside down. He has an incredible heart in leadership to see and unleash the potential of others. He's been working in this space for decades, developing curriculum and different tools and resources to help people develop their own personal stories and taking that story, moving it out and to create a change in our world. He has an incredible heart for helping people to see their own life through a lens of possibility, specifically, and helping people see the power of second chances. Aaron, thank you so much for being here. How are we feeling?
Well, I was feeling good until you just said I've been doing this for decades. So I'm a little bit old now.
I love it. I love it. But you know your stuff, which is always exciting. And so today, we're going to be talking specifically about this idea of story of self. And I know you have this core belief that if you don't own your story, somebody else will. And so I'm excited for us to continue digging into that. I think you have some slides to share with us. If you want to share your screen, and let's jump in and get to the juice here.
All right. Well, I'll share the screen in a second. Let me provide a little bit of background on the decades of my experience. I started teaching in the 90s. I taught for almost 25 years up in Michigan. I'm now coming at y'all from Texas. I'm in San Antonio, but I actually work mostly in Houston. As Gary said, a lot of my work has a tendency to do with story. Brief synopsis is when I was a teacher, I saw something was missing, and I'm going to get to that more in a second. And I couldn't figure out what it was. It really bugged me, and so I began this journey of how as a teacher can best unleash the potential of my students. And that's just taken me on this amazing journey all over the world and to you today. But I think for you to truly understand where I'm coming from, I think it would be best to kind of understand where the story begins. And oddly enough, when I began doing my own work on my own story, I realized my story began in the hallways of junior high back in Van Hoosen, decades ago, Gary, in the mid 80s. So my story of self was leaving Mrs. Forbush's English class after first hour, and I was walking down the hallways of my middle school. Now, to really understand why this walk was so important, you got to understand the mid 80s, which probably most of the people didn't get to kind of experience the fashion highlights of the 1980s. So as I was walking down the hall, I wasn't just walking down the hall, I was gliding down the hall because I was in the height of 80s fashion. I had a cutoff sleeve t-shirt that was white with a big red dot and some Chinese saying in the middle. It probably was Chinese for idiot or something, but I didn't know, so I was rocking it. But the key part of my ensemble was really my pants. In the 80s, pre-MC Hammer, there was this fashion called parachute pants. And that day I was rocking my only pair of parachute pants. And unlike MC Hammer's loose flowing parachute pants, the mid 80s parachute pants were very, very tight, specifically in all the wrong areas. And they had zippers all over them. So parachute pants were made of parachute material. So one, they were very swishy, they were very uncomfortable, they were very tight, and they were very high. But it didn't matter because that was the fashion. It was middle school. I was cool. So as I'm strutting down the hallway, swishing my pants away, my zippers are clicking against them, I really thought I was king of the world. And there was one more thing you should really know about the pants. They weren't originally my pants. They were my brother's pants. Now, my brother's 4 years older than me. So at this time, he's in high school. He's driving. He's on the varsity soccer team. He's a god to me. I worshiped him. And the fact that I got to wear his once owned parachute pants, I really felt like I was a complete being in middle school or junior high for me back then. So I remember the exact space and the exact time as I was walking and about to turn down the main hallway. I remember the fluorescent lighting, the click of my feet on the floor, the water fountain to my right. And as I was walking in my own thoughts, I heard a voice behind me, a female voice, say, "Hey, Aaron." And I thought, that's a girl talking to me. You know, middle school, this is going to be the greatest moment ever. And as I began to turn, I hear her say, "Nice pants." Heck yeah, I was feeling it. But as I slowly turned, my eye caught her eye. She was a cheerleader, and she was walking with her whole tribe of cheerleaders. And it took an instant. The world just stopped in that moment. I remember it like it was yesterday, where I caught her eye, and I realized in that moment, she didn't really mean nice pants. She meant those pants are ridiculous. I immediately turned the corner and kept on walking. And in that moment, my world just shifted. I immediately became aware that I wasn't cool and that something was wrong. And I didn't know it right away, but it began to slowly dawn over me on the next hours and days as I realized wearing hand-me-down pants that are a few years older than you are in the 1980s wasn't cool. And I was middle school, so I thought, or junior high, so I thought I knew the world. But in that instant, having a girl make fun of you in junior high, I wasn't cool. And I was wearing hand-me-down pants, and something was wrong with the world. As I walked to my next hour and my brain is trying to process this shift of worlds, something slowly began to dawn on me that I didn't want to be this person. I didn't want to be in this world. So I made a defining decision in that moment that would stick with me for the next decade, which was in that instance, I discovered I had a superpower, and it was to disappear. I went invisible. And from that day on, for the next 10 years, I completely became invisible. I knew to where to sit in class, right? If you sit in the middle to the left, teachers will never see you. Kids won't talk to you, right? You sit in the middle, teachers are going to see you. You sit in the back with the bad kids, they're going to see you. I knew to not go to any dances. I knew to not get A's and don't get C's. If you can hover around that 3-point mark, nobody will ever pay attention to you because you'll get no awards, but no one's calling home to your parents either. Get involved, but not too involved. Wear jeans and wear a sweatshirt every single day. Wear tennis shoes, just make them plain. No matter what you do, don't do anything to stand out. And those were the decisions I made for the rest of junior high, high school, even into college. I went to an average college. I became as average as I could be because if I'm average, I blended in with the herd. In about a decade later, I decided to become a teacher. You know, you hate school, so what becomes more obvious but to become a teacher? But when I became a teacher, I really wanted to kind of bring my best to it, right? I was going to be that teacher to have an impact. I had this ideal in my head that this was going to be the greatest thing, and I was going to become the greatest teacher and be an inspiration to the next generation. But I discovered something phenomenal, that when I began to teach and I stood in front of my class and I began to talk, I discovered the secret to invisibility, right? Can one invisible person see another invisible? Well, if you're both invisible, you shouldn't be able to see each other, but that's a lie. The fact that I knew the power of invisibility is I could actually detect that power in other kids. So when I saw that kid sit in the middle left, when I saw the kid in jeans and sweatshirts, when I saw the kid just trying to skate in at the last minute and leave as soon as the bell rings, but never be late and never leave early, never create a ruckus, the kid who never raised his hand but always handed in his homework, I'm like, I get that kid. So I began to see the invisible kids and I began to call them out. I'm like, oh, I see you. And they were shocked that I could see them because they thought they were invisible. But as time went on, I began to discover more and more kids were trying to be invisible. See, I thought I was the only one in school trying to just blend into the herd. But I realized even the popular kids, even though they were being seen, right? They were the star of the basketball team, or they were a cheerleader, or they were on student council. They would become invisible, but they did it by wearing a mask. And I became determined to see all of my students, to see them for what they were. Because the problem is when you're invisible, you can't see your own potential. That's the one person you don't see is your own best version of yourself. So that became my mission. So when I was a teacher for 20 years, one of the things that I did was I began a leadership program. And that's kind of where I'm like, well, maybe through leadership, I can unleash this potential. And I gained some experience there. And now that I'm in Texas, I'm working in an addiction treatment center. And I coach individuals on how do they move from where they're at to where they want to be. And this is kind of the journey I want to walk through with you today. The thread, the how I learned to unleash potential was through story. The way I verbiage, the way I talk about it is what I call their story of self. Because when I grew up, there was the story that the world told me, right? I wasn't good enough. I was the kid who wore hand-me-down pants. But what I needed to do is shift that story, because I accepted that story that those girls in that hallway gave me that day. And often what the commercials say and what the rest of the world say, this is my story. I just accepted it. I let the world dictate my story. But when I was working with students, that was unacceptable to me. I didn't want the world to dictate my students' stories. And just the same way, like today, I don't want addiction to dictate the people I coach, the individuals I work with today, to dictate their story. So I'm going to make an argument today. And the argument is, if you don't own your story, you're allowing somebody else to own that story. So what I'm going to show you is an overview of how I coach people to own their individual story. So here we go. Let me kind of show you a real general slideshow of how this will work. Here we go. Screen share. Technology with my decades old experience. All right.
Killing it.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Every story begins with you. Your story is all about you. And oftentimes, let's say in addiction or in addicts have a tendency to be self-centered, but so do high school students. Really, who doesn't? Right? The only story we ever experience is our own. From the moment that you're born to today, no one else will live your story but you. So it makes sense to put yourself at the center of your story. And for this to work, we have to accept that, right? It's often easy to externalize our story, right? Like, my story is my wife or my kids, but it's not. My story is my story. And it's the only one I can control. I've been married for 20 years. I cannot control my wife's story. God bless. I have 2 teenage boys. I do not control their story. All I can do is kind of be a guide on it. So what I want you to understand is this is how we understand story 2, right? If you look at Harry Potter or Iron Man or Jaws, right in the title, they tell us who is the lead character in the story. And we're like, okay, this is the way it goes. But for us to understand how to become our full potential, we have to understand that the story begins with the lead character. And for you to own your story and understand the power of it, you have to put yourself at the center of it. The key of this is your story, as I gray out the bottom here, your story is built on what you know. All your life experiences. I'm 50 years old. Every experience I've had throughout my life, my parents are immigrants. I had an older and younger brother, right? An older brother who handed me down a pair of pants. These are defining experiences in the world that I know, right? Every member of our family has played soccer. Why? Because my dad's from England and he played soccer, right? We've handed down these traits because that's what we know. My dad didn't know baseball when he came to America, so none of us played baseball because that's not what we knew. So we're handed these stories from our families for generations, and these become the stories we know. There's this statistic that says that 80% of parenting is storytelling. So I'm very aware of how I present the world to my children because I'm teaching them what they know. And what I don't teach them is the stuff that they don't know. And so this is my lived experiences. I know what it is to be a teacher. I know what it is to travel overseas. I know what it is to be a child of immigrants. These are the bits and pieces that make up my story. And me as a character is made up of 50 years of those lived experiences. And this is where our story begins. And it's a very important thing for us to acknowledge that what we know, because that's what we build our story on. So as we move forward in life, the pieces that we have to create a future are built on the things we know. If you want to start a business, but you've never started a business, you're not doing what you know. You're not doing what you don't know. This is a conference called Changemakers. Well, if you're going to create change, you're going to see real quick that change doesn't occur in the world that you know. It occurs in a world that you don't know. So let me kind of proceed you through this because this is a very important point. So here we are, characters, and the characters that we are today, we exist in what we know in the world that we don't know. But the world does something amazing. It throws us challenges. And what happens is when something goes wrong in our world, or we try to take on a challenge, whether it's a challenge that the world gives us or a challenge we take on, right? You're starting your own business or you're trying to change something in the way you do things. Maybe you're like me and you need to lose 20 pounds. Well, then all of a sudden, now that becomes a challenge. But I don't know how to lose 20 pounds. I sure as heck know how to put it on. That's something I know. But the point still is like when we take on a challenge, this occurs in a world that we don't know, right? I know how I eat when I wake up. I know how I dress when I wake up. I know the stories that I know. But when something goes wrong, then we don't know. You get a call, on a Monday, I'm talking to my dad about my life and I'm on a car ride and we're sharing everything. The next morning at 3 a.m., I get a call that he's in a coma. On one day, I'm a son. I know who I am. I am my father's son. The next day, I'm packing my car to drive to Michigan in order to figure out who I am without my father. From one day to the next, what I know and what I don't know changes. And this is how the world throws things at us. Sometimes they're very dramatic like that, and sometimes they're very simple. You didn't get into the college that you wanted. You get let go from a job. The world is going to constantly throw challenges at us. When I work with students, or when I work with alcoholics and addicts, one thing I can tell them is I'm like, I never can make your world easier. All I can do is make you stronger to deal with the challenges, because the suffering in the world will never go away. Every major religion agrees on that. Every major religion agrees that suffering is part of our life. The question is how do we deal with it? So when we're in our known, we're thrown challenges. And what challenges in our lives do, and whatever challenge you're facing right now, whether professional or personal, it throws you into a very, very important space. It throws you into the space of choice. This is the place when you look at this diagram, we have this choice when we're considered with the challenge. My dad is in a coma. What do? Well, I got to take care of my kids, and I got to go to work, and I got to handle this stuff. And my brother's there, he can handle it. Or do I go forward into this and face and be there and stand next to my father as he slowly has to pass away? The question is, who am I in this, right? As I transition from a career to teaching to coaching people in leadership, coaching addicts, right? Do I return to a field of education, which I feel very comfortable, or do I step into a space that is unknown? Choice is a very important point for us, because it is what we decide to do with our fear. So if you're sitting here today, it's like, man, I want to be more. There's more to me. Well, if we choose fear, if we choose like, well, maybe not today or maybe next week, then what we do is we choose what we know. Fear causes us to retreat, right? If a little kid's scared, he runs to his parents. He goes to what he knows, because what we know is safe and secure. So maybe you're like, I don't know if I should leave my job just yet. Well, understandably, there's a lot of responsibilities, and that's what you know. But I really want to start something new. Well, that's the unknown, right? It's like stepping on a roller coaster that you've never been on before, or stepping on a plane to travel to an unknown place. That fear is going to come up. But one of the things that me and the people that I work with say repeatedly, if not 10 times, 20 times, or 100 times a day, is what we tell to the people I work with: choose courage. Because only in courage can we begin to take on the challenges as a place of transformation. So what I'm going to call you today is, this is your story, and your story, I guarantee, is challenging, especially if you want it to be a meaningful one. And in this space, any space, you're going to be given the opportunity to make a choice. If fear is in you, choose courage, because that's the thing that catapults you to face the challenge, to drive 24 hours to stand next to your dad as he takes his last breath. It sounds horrible, but the thing is in that difficult moment, I chose to be someone who could stand by my brother and my mom and be there in the most difficult time. Fear told me not to go, but I chose courage, because that's the person I wanted to be in this life, right? Fear makes me less, but courage forces me to become more. When those girls made fun of my pants, I chose fear. I chose invisibility. I chose to be only part of the world that I knew. It wasn't until I saw students do the same that I found the courage to become more than what I could be, right? It was easy for me to be like every other teacher, like just give the assignments, get through the day, go home. But somehow my responsibility to others and their courage caused me to go forward. When I got hired to work with people who are suffering from addictions to meth or alcohol or to heroin, I know nothing about addiction. It was terrifying to me. But then I had hope and strength that maybe I could make a difference. Maybe I was somebody that could help them cross a threshold. So if you're wavering right now, you know that you're at this line, this challenge to your potential, if you're at this line of fear and courage. But it's only by choosing courage that transformation can come. And this is the critical point. This is the critical point that I address with the people that I work with, is that if they want to change their lives, this is not about getting the right job. This is not about getting the right car. It's not about the level of income you get. It's not about how many likes on social media that you get. Change occurs internally. You can't change your outward circumstances to change your inward circumstances. Addicts know that better than anyone. This is why they take pills or they drink. They're using something from the outside to change how they feel inside. So what I approach them with is no, you have to choose courage, and you have to change who you are inside. And the way we change the way we are inside is by changing the way we tell our story, the way we engage our story. If our story is a story of fear and retreat to what we know, then we're always going to remain the same, right? There lies the definition of insanity. If we keep doing the same thing that we know, then we're only going to get the same results that we know. It's only through stepping down here into what we know, unknown, can we find the potential in the world, but truly find the potential within ourselves. Change and transformation can only occur by facing the challenges we never fought before. For you to become your best, you must do what you've never done before. You must take on greater challenges. You want to see if you can lead? Well, then you have to step in front and lead. If you want to start a business, then you have to start a business. You can't just talk about it. Talking about it just leads you right back to what you know. That's a place of fear. This requires action. The hero doesn't find the treasure unless he slays the dragon. This is one of the most difficult journeys I think that people understand. Everyone wants to talk about change, but most people can't make it. That's why like 90% of people come up with a New Year's resolution and quit within a couple of days. Because change is this great idea until you realize you have to change. Well, I want to lose weight. Well, I want the food to change. I want it to taste as good, but have less calories. Good luck with that. I know that I have to exercise more and eat less. I can buy as many books or go to as many gyms as I want. The truth is, until I change my attitude towards myself, I can't change anything. So this journey is the journey that we're really truly called on. We can talk about being a change maker till we're blue in the face, but until you put your foot into the journey and cross that line from what you know to what you don't know, then you won't discover your own potential, because that's what is lying here. This is why we told this story for 5,000 years. This is why every culture on earth has a version of the hero's journey, because everyone knows to reach our potential, to become the next best version of ourselves, and to allow ourselves to transform into that, we must take this journey into what we don't know. To become who we're capable of being, we must journey into a space we've never journeyed before. So this is where I encourage people that I work with to lean into this. For some people, it's like, what does my life look like, right? You think, well, alcohol is the problem. Absolutely, it's not the problem. You're the problem. Alcohol is just covering the problems of the world. But the world doesn't change. People change. And so for them to go back into their world as sober doesn't make life easy. Well, if I just quit alcohol or I quit drugs, everything's going to be better. No, it's not, because the world is still going to be difficult. The world's still going to be challenging, right? There's still war, there's still death, there's still destruction. Pain is very real. It's the one thing we all have in common is suffering. So in order to deal with it, we must become stronger, right? If I talk about going to the gym every day, it doesn't make a 30-pound weight become 20 pounds. It's only by lifting weights I become stronger. And this is the process of transformation. If you want to become the best version of yourself, you've got to walk the harder path. You can't just do what you've done before. And this is the essence of what I'm teaching. It's a shift of story. Because if we tell the same old stories, we're going to get the same old results. But it's through challenging our known, by challenging our old stories, that we begin to change ourselves. And then we can return to the known world and create a new story. And so if you don't do that, then someone else will, right? If you're living up here in the known, then everybody else gets to tell your story. Well, my boss didn't give me a promotion, or I didn't find the right girl, or if I made more money. You're giving away your story to other people. You're not creating your story. You're giving it away to the culture around you. And culture is necessary. It's not, I know there's a lot of controversy, and don't get me wrong, we've got the best culture we can have for the moment. It doesn't mean it's perfect. But what we need to understand is that if we don't act as ourselves, as powerful individuals, as writers of our own story, then the world is going to attempt our story, to tell our story for us. You need McDonald's, you need Gucci, you need this type of car or this type of square footage of a house, or you need to have a spouse, or you need to have this many kids. Everybody's going to tell you what you're going to be, and you're just going to keep on giving the story to the outer world without discovering what really makes you happy. There's an article written by a nurse, a palliative care nurse, who deals with people who are dying. And she's worked with them for decades, Gary. So she's worked with them, and she recorded what they regretted most when they were dying. And the number one regret was they did not have the courage to live their own life. And if you really think about that, what are they saying? They didn't have the courage to live their own story. What they did was try to live the story that everyone else would praise and reward. They never took the risks and the challenge to discover who they really were. And how sad is that to be in the last moments of your life and to realize you didn't even really live your own life. You lived the life that everyone else was telling. So what I've encouraged every person that I can work with to be a leader, to be a real leader, you have to know who you are, you have to know your story, and you have to be able to like tell the risks it took to get there and understand you won't pass every challenge. There are many, many times in my life that I have completely fallen on my face. But those are the things that don't define my failures. They define my resilience to discover this path of who I am. I'm 50 years old, and I still don't know the full extent of my story. And I hope I don't. I hope that I'm not one of those people on my last breath that thinks that thinks with regret back of like, oh, I wish I would have tried this, or I wish I would have tried that. No matter how, I'm not a fan of retirement. I'm a fan of living every day I can to the best I can until I live, because I want this to be my story. And I want it to be a good story. So not only do I want it to positively impact me, I want to make sure that my life has a positive impact on others. And this is the world that I'm attempting to create. But often we assume that the world is going to give us that world, but it's not. It's through this journey of discovering our own story, of discovering our own potential in the unknown, that we can truly begin to manifest the best version of ourselves. Like that's the wish for every one of my students, and that's my wish for every person that I meet or talk to on Zoom, is that I really believe the world will become better if each of us manifest the best version of our story. I'll end with this. I'm going to read my phone. I don't just preach it, I live it. And then I yell at my kids to live it. So my kids started school this week in Texas. So I sent them a text because I was at work. If I can find it. Sorry, Gary, I'm a terrible person. Oh, here we go. So my sons were leaving for school on Tuesday. And like I said, they're in San Antonio and I'm out in Houston. So this was the message I sent to them because they were scared. They haven't been in school for a year because of COVID. My son's one son's a junior, one's a sophomore. And even though they did school online, they didn't. Both my kids are a little bit like me, a little bit introverted. So going back to school, and remember, we moved from Michigan, so they don't know a lot of people where we live. So going back to school was very unknown. They hadn't been there in a year. They don't know many people. It was very scary. The school has increased by 600 kids because Texas is growing. So I sent them a message, and this is the message I said to them, and hopefully the message I'm conveying to you. The unknown is a scary place. Bad things can happen in the unknown. There are monsters there in the unknown. So you are right to be fearful. But out there in the unknown is the only place where you can find your potential and your purpose. Out there are dragons, but there is also treasure. Out there you will be challenged, but it is only through those challenges can you find how great you can truly become. Today you cross that line of fear and confront it. Choose courage. All you control is you, so bring your best. Boys, this is your journey, your adventure. Do not let fear make you less. Be strong and courageous and allow yourself to become the best possible version of yourself. This is not only how you become stronger, but if you choose courage, those around you will get stronger too. I'll end with this. I don't send that to my sons because I'm this weird inspirational guy, although maybe I am. I send this because this is the message I wish somebody would have said to me in middle school or into high school. I wish instead of me thinking that I was less because I was wearing hand-me-down pants, that somebody reached out to me and said, no, you're more than this, but you've got to walk the harder path. But I didn't walk the harder path. I chose fear. And for 10 years, I allowed the world to define me as less. And it wasn't the world's fault. It was my fault, right? I wanted to blame everyone for how I felt. But then I woke up. And in waking up, I realized it's not the world's fault. It's my fault. And I've taken responsibility from that day for my own story. And again, like I said, nothing about my story has been easy. But every part of it has been worth it. I wouldn't trade a day or any of the challenges I've made because it's allowed me to have this amazing experience and meet the most incredible people and to be with others in the challenges and to have conversations about hardship because we all go through it. And to watch them walk through the challenges, to watch somebody who a year ago was sitting in their house for 4 years drinking alcohol, and then today, 4 years later, deciding to go back to college so that they can get a psychology degree to help each other. I get to be on that journey. So I challenge you. I challenge you to stop waiting and trying to win at the game of life in the outer world and begin the adventure of the inner story. Because, like, cheesy enough is that I firmly 100% believe that this is your only life and that this is the only story you got, because that's all I know. And if you don't own your story, somebody else will. That's all I got, Gary.
Amazing. Amazing. Seriously, thank you so much for sharing your heart in this message and in presenting the challenge to us. I think what's important for everyone to know is that it's never too late. You can always make the choice in any given moment to show up and to choose courage, because fear is going to try and pull us back into retreat and retreat back and go back into our world. But isn't it just so much easier to be invisible?
Mm-hmm.
But we've both coached people in their second half of life, in their 70s, in their 80s, that are making the choice to change the trajectory of their lives so that they can tackle that change in their own story, in their narrative, which is then externalizing out into the world, creating a massive impact in others. And so I love that this model, this way of looking at story, works in those micro moments of life, but also as we look at the broader themes of things like invisibility. I just want to retreat. But every single day you can make the choice to see the potential in every person that comes across your life, whether it's your boys, whether it's someone at the grocery store, whoever it might be. And so, Aaron, thank you so much. I know you've also prepared a free gift for anyone listening in that wants to continue to dig deeper in this. And so anyone listening, we've got a button right here on your screen. Click it and jump on over, grab that gift, stay connected with Aaron, because this is your challenge. And it's up to you of whether or not you're going to make the choice to continue to invest in your story. Aaron, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.